I got us into this mess. I'm going to get us out. Theresa May carrying that pledge that she made Monday to conservative backbenchers with her here to Paris after a day that has seen the UK Prime Minister negotiate with the DUP, the Northern Irish Unionist Party, over a deal to govern, and a first session of Parliament since last week's loss of an outright Conservative majority in the Commons. A weakened PM invited to dinner and a night out to see the France-England football friendly. Just how weakened? What is the possible deal with a DUP that's soft on Brexit and very hard on social values? Has Theresa May's electoral setback changed the course of Brexit negotiations that are due to open, by the way, next Monday? What are the possible scenarios, both for Britain and also for its Prime Minister? Today in the France 24 debate, we're asking what Theresa May's game plan is. With us, Jeremy Stubbs, President of the British Conservatives in Paris. Welcome back.
Good evening.
From Strasbourg, Mary Honeyball, Labour member of the European Parliament. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you and good evening to everyone.
From London, Rory Broomfield, director of the Better Off Out campaign. Welcome to the show.
Good evening, great to be here.
And François Lafont, who teaches at the French Political Science Institute, Sciences Po, and who keeps a close eye on, I guess you could call it a triptych, right? There's France, there's Britain, there's also Germany in this mix.
Exactly.
Thank you for being with us. The France 24 debate on Facebook and Twitter, the hashtag F24debate. Earlier, her first address to a new parliament, the returning Prime Minister, speaking of national unity.
As we face difficult challenges ahead, let us come together in a spirit of national unity to keep our country safe and build a stronger, fairer and more prosperous future for everyone in every part of our United Kingdom.
Yeah. Mary Honeyball, that call for national unity, are you going to pick up on it? Are you going to seize it?
Well, of course, everyone wants to see national unity. It's difficult to argue with it. But I think Britain at the moment is very far from united. In fact, I think people are very confused. The result of the referendum does not seem to be holding because recent opinion polls have shown that, in fact, there are a majority now of people who wish they had voted differently. And that's an important matter. The country's very confused, obviously, otherwise we would not have had the election result we did have. Perhaps as importantly, if not more importantly, there is a huge divide between the young and the old, and that was very much reflected in the general election results. The young voted overwhelmingly for my party, for the Labour Party. Elder people voted Conservative, and that divide has becoming more and more apparent. So I think talking about national unity is a difficult concept at the moment, and I think maybe Mrs May should think quite hard about what she means by that. And also, she has to accept democratic scrutiny even of her plans for Brexit, and that, in a sense, is contrary to unity because we need open debate and discussion about our future in the European Union.
Jeremy Stubbs, what does the Prime Minister mean when she talks of national unity?
Well, the first thing she means is forming a government, and we can't do anything until that's done. And that national unity will be the reflection of a majority, eventually constructed, put together in the House of Commons. So that's the first thing. Whether everybody in the country all agrees is another matter, but if you take, for example, Brexit, it's one area where Mrs May and Mr Corbyn actually do agree. They're both in favour of Brexit. It may well be that there are members of the Labour Party who disagree with that. There probably are in the Conservative Party, but that particular consensus holds.
Rory Broomfield, the point made there by Mary Honeyball that the latest poll shows that there's a line of fracture in Britain between the youth and the older voters.
Well, one poll may demonstrate that, and of course the poll that mattered was on the 8th of June, the general election, and Mary is right to indicate that constituencies like Canterbury, Sheffield and Lincoln all indicated a big population of the student vote going to the Labour Party. But this is because, in my view, the Conservative Party didn't effectively make the economy front and stage on the election, and then didn't give the aspiration that many Conservatives hold dear as a principle to young people in the general election campaign. And if they had done, then you would have seen a lot more young people across the United Kingdom voting Conservative last Thursday.
All right, an often subdued Jeremy Corbyn seemed spirited during that opening session of Parliament when he remarked, he even joked about the expected delay in next Monday's Queen's speech, the speech that spells out government policy.
And I congratulate her on returning, and I'm sure she will agree with me that democracy is a wondrous thing and can throw up some very unexpected results. And I'm sure we all look forward to welcoming the Queen's speech just as soon as the coalition of chaos has been negotiated.
Coalition of chaos, François Lafont?
I like the expression. I mean, this is well seen. The point is maybe the UK is becoming more European in a way of doing politics, because for a long time when you vote, you used to vote in the UK, you know the evening who was the winner, what kind of government and Prime Minister, which is not anymore the case. I mean, this is a kind of Europeanization of the political scene of the UK. That's the first element. The second one is the comeback of the Parliament in the game. I mean, remember that some month ago, Prime Minister May wanted to go for the Brexit without taking into account the Parliament. Now the Parliament will be a bit more master of the time and the politics within the UK. So that's the second element. Third, I mean, the Europeans, the continentals, are waiting for negotiations. And I presume that Michel Barnier is looking to have a negotiator, somebody to whom he will be able to talk from next Monday, because it was planned to start on the 19th of June, which seems to be a bit also in a problematic situation.
Could it delay the Queen's speech, delay as well the start of Brexit negotiations, Jeremy Stubbs?
It might a little bit, but I think everybody is anxious for those to begin, and I'm sure that some brief but significant words on that subject will pass between Mrs May and Mr Macron when they see each other tonight. I mean, we're waiting for these negotiations to begin. They've got to start as early as possible. Even if tremendously important things are not said on the very first few days, they've got to make contact. This process must begin.
And do you have to have a deal on an alliance before that next Monday in that case?
Well, yes, I think the deal on the alliance should be announced from 1 hour
How do you feel about it? How do you feel about a deal with the DUP, which has views which its critics call retrograde on the family, most notably, homosexual rights, women's rights?
Well, I think, first of all, the DUP, like other parties from Northern Ireland, has emerged from a period of tragic troubles. There are many things in its past, but they've all evolved a long way, including Sinn Féin too. I think it's also fair to say that they're going to evolve on these other questions, these social questions, abortion, gay marriage, not if we reject them and say you're not fit to work in a government, but if we allow them to get close to us, as it were. And I think that what they will be asking for are things that are probably good for Northern Ireland as a whole, and also good for the Brexit process.
Good for the Brexit process. Mary Honeyball, the DUP in favour of a softer Brexit than many inside of the Conservative Party.
Well, there's two major things with the DUP, one of which you've touched on, which is social issues, and particularly on abortion rights, which the European Parliament has very strong views on, and we are very much in favour of a women's right to choose, which is not the DUP line. it's worth noting, before we talk too much more about the DUP in these subjects, that at the moment, last year, over 700 women left Northern Ireland because they couldn't get an abortion there, because the laws in Northern Ireland are different from the British mainland. And the DUP supports abortion only in cases where the woman's life is at risk. They don't even support abortion for rape. So that's how serious it is. And we have heard that there are those in the Conservative Party in Parliament who will introduce private members' bills to reduce abortion time limits if the agreement with the DUP goes ahead. So that's very, very serious. And it won't just be that they can write off these social issues and say they're no part of the agreement. They will be there. In terms of Brexit, of course, the one thing that the DUP and all the parties in Northern Ireland want is to maintain the open border with ERA, with Southern Ireland. And that's going to be difficult if we go for anything remotely hard in the Brexit negotiations, because that's absolutely key to it. And it's going to be a very, very difficult one to resolve. So I think even if there are initial talks very soon, as the previous speaker has said, they won't be about the main issues, because, to be quite honest, Theresa May doesn't seem to have worked out what she wants in the main issues. She didn't raise them in any substance in the general election campaign. She's now in a completely different situation, so she's got to rethink it, and we're not sure she even thought it through very well in the first place. It's a bit chaotic, to put it mildly. This is the real chaos.
Rory Broomfield, do you agree that coming to a consensus on an open border, the only land border the UK has with an EU member nation is Ireland, coming to a consensus on the open border with Ireland, free trade with the EU there, is going to be hard to obtain?
No, I don't agree with that statement, because everyone wants this free trade area. Everyone wants the common travel area to be maintained. Of course, that was there prior to the European Union. So it's really the status quo in those ideas, and there should be a note of caution when people say the DUP want an extreme soft Brexit or a softer Brexit, because ultimately there's many synergies with what the DUP was standing on in terms of its manifesto in the last general election, along with the Conservative Party, which ultimately gained the most seats in the House of Commons.
François Lafont?
Listen, I'm French, so this is domestic politics in a certain sense. If I see the problems from outside, I would say this is their business. The point is, first, they want to exit from the European Union, so we have to make sure that it will happen as soon as possible, because we are waiting for 1 year now from the referendum. And then after, we will try to find an agreement, a new agreement between the UK and the European Union. But the first step is to make sure that we separate, because it was the intent from the citizens. So the point is not to confuse everything and to say, well, maybe the custom union could be good, single market we will see, maybe one...
So hang on, what you're saying is there's no such thing as a soft Brexit. It's a hard Brexit, and then you negotiate.
No. The point from, if I have understood correctly, Michel Barnier, is to say, first, we have to separate the UK from the European Union, the 27 other members. And then, after, in the second step, we will try to find a new kind of agreement between UK and the other members. So this is a Norway system, this is a Switzerland, and so on. We have discussed already these kind of things. But in any case, this is my impression, the UK will lose something. They will not be able to pick up and to say, we want this, but not that, we want this. This is not a menu. I mean, you have to take everything.
Point taken, Rory Broomfield?
Well, we'll see how the negotiations progress. But, of course, the government has been clear in its manifesto in terms of the Conservative Party that they want to leave the single market, which is also agreed by the Labour Party. If you're looking at free movement of people, which the Labour Party want to end with regards to the European Union. So, again, actually, within the House of Commons, there is synergy over very crucial positions with regards to the European Union.
All right, warning against a deal with the DUP is the former Conservative Prime Minister, John Major. He spoke to the BBC earlier and said the danger is that however much any government tries, they will not be seen to be impartial if they're locked into a parliamentary deal at Westminster with one of the Northern Ireland parties, Jeremy Stubbs. You agree with John Major?
Well, various people, including Sir John, have raised these concerns, and they're perfectly legitimate. But being legitimate concerns, the government is well aware of them, and the government must try extra hard to make sure that the peace process and the rebuilding of a government in Northern Ireland goes ahead in the best possible way. I think that, indeed, Arlene Foster, on the side of the DUP, is herself rather more limited in her freedom than some people might say, because she has a responsibility to make that process work too.
But it's a funny time right now with a breakdown of the national unity government that's happening in Northern Ireland itself.
Well, one never chooses one's time exactly as one would like, but in fact I think that gives us an added impetus to make sure that this is got right on all sides. So I don't think that there is any need for scaremongering at this time. Need for caution, yes, very good idea. Scaremongering, no. Mary Honeyball, do you agree?
Well, I don't totally disagree, but I think it's not helpful to use words like scaremongering. It's not only John Major who said this, and we mustn't forget that John Major was one of the architects of the peace process, followed later by Tony Blair. So John Major does know what he's talking about. It's also the Irish Taoiseach, the Irish Prime Minister. Enda Kenny has been very clear about this. And I do think that there is a real danger here because Northern Ireland itself is in a not particularly stable state because of the collapse of the power sharing agreement. And the peace process is still fragile, and there's a real danger that we could go back to some kind of troubles. So this is not an easy alliance to negotiate. The DUP obviously think that they can do it, but I think we all just need to be a little bit careful about what's going on here, because it could prove difficult and could cause us all a lot of problems. And the last thing we want to go back to is the Irish situation as it was 20, 30 years ago.
All right, the difficulties in Northern Ireland, just one of the issues on the table. Of course, more broadly, there's how Theresa May handles the continent. Remember, she's in Paris this Tuesday. We'll talk about it when we come back. You're watching the France 24 debate.